Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Scotland Rugby News podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison, and I'm joined by two superstar guests, or I would have been, but they weren't available, so we'll settle for Rob Robertson, author of the finest book on my coffee table in the living room, and Gavin Harper, the boss of Scotland Rugby News. Before we get kicked off and pick this Lions squad that's going to go on holiday to Australia, a quick word from our sponsor. Scotland Rugby News is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to S1 Jobs and upload your CV straight after the podcast. With thousands of jobs across Scotland, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs. You can start your search tonight. Gentlemen, what a weekend. Lots of people putting their hand up for Lions and a few people maybe withdrawing their name from the Lions. Gav, busy weekend?
Yeah, busy weekend, but look, it was the last chance for anybody to sort of stake a claim. I suppose we probably saw in Dublin a couple of Northampton players, I think Tommy Freeman and Henry Pollock, putting their hands up. And I thought Edinburgh, they're okay, held their own against Bath until the Bath bench came on and they were just far too powerful that last kind of 15, 20 minutes.
A lot of the announcements, Rob, in the press about players coming back for injury or players being injured, the bit that's in the headline is Lions. Either they're back in or they've taken themselves out. How much do you think that's played into people's minds over the course of the last couple of games?
It's been a sort of is he in, is he out type thing. The coaches are always trying to give the impression all the players like Tupelotu will be fine and the rest will all be back. So it's more a case, Bruce, of the players who hadn't been there, they'll be the ones who will probably be sweating. And we hear today, we might touch on it later, that Kellen Doris looks like he'll be out of the Lions tour after a shoulder operation. And that's not been confirmed. Well, it's been confirmed he's had a shoulder operation, but not he's out of the Lions tour. So that adds another wee side to the whole thing. And let's not forget, you've still got a weekend coming up. You know, rugby's not like football. You can sort of, what would you say, you know, I'm not saying not try, but you have to really, if you get picked, you have to try. So a lot of these guys, you know, be thinking to themselves, do I really want to go out there and play against Zebra and Connacht? No, they'd rather sort of keep themselves wrapped in cotton wool, but they've not got a choice.
No, we'll see. But before we get into selection, let's go to captain, because this is the one that's always kind of, if he, you know, and it was Colin Dean's 70th birthday this week. You know, probably the biggest victim of a Lions captaincy selection when he didn't get to play because of Kieran Fitzgerald. The captain really needs to be test starter. So, Gav, have you got a captain not penciled? Have you got an inked-in captain for this tour?
I did have, and then, as Rob's just alluded to, Kellen Doris got injured at the weekend, and it was thankfully only penciled in, so I had to go back to it and think about it this afternoon. And I think with everything that's kind of the way that the tour's panned out, the coaches, I think it'll be Maro Itoje. I think you look at the contenders, somebody who's absolutely guaranteed to start. Sione might have been an option had he not been injured for the last 3 and a bit months. And what a story that would have been going back to Australia as not just as a Lion, but as captain. You know, you look at the last 2 weeks has been filled with debate about who will play at 10. So that probably takes Finn out. You know, but it probably also rules out somebody like Andy Farrell as captain. Do you think, well, who's guaranteed to start? Maro's probably one of very few. You
agree with that, Rob?
Like Gav, I had Kellen Doris down as my captain. If we work on the assumption he's injured, you know, Sam, this sounds really Scottish here, but the English press have been talking up Maro Itoje, or he has to be the captain, even when Kellen Doris was fit. He has to be. I don't know. I'm just being bloody minded here, but I would go with Dan Sheehan, the Irish hooker, because he'll definitely start. And you know he's Irish. Andy Farrell will know him really, really well. I probably think that Gav's right. It'll be Itoje. But I'm really angry at the English press talking him up and saying, "Oh, he has to be the captain." So I would go Dan Sheehan. It probably won't be, but it kind of should be.
if we're looking at guaranteed starters, you've probably named a couple. The only other one I reckon is Gibson Park is guaranteed to start.
Yeah.
After that, I think we're probably clutching at straws. But if you get angry at the English press, can you imagine how the English press would get angry at me? Because I think Darcy Graham should be captain. So they probably wouldn't. They probably wouldn't appreciate that. Right, let's start up front. Number 1. Loose head prop. I think we're probably going to know who we're going to start, but Gav, go for it. Who's your starter?
Right, I've got I've got a squad of 3. My starter would be Andrew Porter, and then probably my next two would be Ellis Genge and Pierre Schoeman.
Wow.
Which I think, when you think of the impact Schoeman's had since he qualified for Scotland, and I think when you look at the options, the only other name I've kind of noted down is Nicky Smith of Wales, and I think beyond that, there aren't, Cian Healy's like same age as you, there aren't huge amounts of options, and I think I think that's why Pierre gets in. Porter's, ever present in that Ireland team, and Genge is Genge, and he gives you a bit of ball carrying and scrummaging is maybe not as strong, but yeah, I think that's the 3.
I think three Scottish supporters here are probably all plumping for Schoeman ahead of Smith. Rob, any disagreements with that?
Can I just put my hands on the table here just now? But I've been heavily influenced after spending 3 hours with Jim Telford, who did his line squad exclusively for us. So I'm probably being influenced by that, because if you're going to listen to anybody when you're making the decision, it's Jim Telford. And he took it very seriously. He said he wanted a week to do it. So he took it that seriously. But what's making me laugh over this choice, Bruce, is Jim Telford went with Ellis Genge to start, but I'm going with our great leader. I'm with Gavin. I would start Andrew Porter, and I would have Genge on the bench and Schoeman. I know we haven't gone through this together before, but I would go exactly the same 3 as Gav on that, and I'd go against Jim, who wanted Ellis Genge. So same as Gav on that. So Gav, you've got one up over Jim Telford there.
A brave man takes the opinion of me over the Jim Telford.
Anybody who takes the opinion over Jim Telford's a brave man.
I think Rob knows who's paying his wages there, Gavin. Okay, no huge debate there. Smith, I think, will potentially feature if there's injuries. So we've already mentioned Sheehan. I think we're all going to say Sheehan's our starting hooker. So who gets to go with him?
Luke Cowan-Dickie and Dewey Lake. I've probably destroyed both their names, but and in that, actually maybe not in that order. Maybe Dewey Lake is backup. Yeah, probably Dewey Lake is backup. I think that's quite strong actually for the Lions. Not every position is going to be strong, but in relative terms, I think that's a strong 3. And especially with Sheehan, he's miles ahead of both of them. But even so, I think that would be a good mix.
No Jamie George, Gav?
I've got 5 names down. Jamie George and Dewey Lake are 2 of the 5, but I haven't gone for either of them. I've gone Dan Sheehan, Luke Cowan-Dickie, and then I've gone Ronan Kelleher. Probably influenced by that Irish element. Yeah. But you could make a case for Dewey Lake or Luke. Like they're now in the situation where I know Andy Farrell said like the nationality makeup is not important, but it is. Like the reality is there will be a pressure on him to get some Welsh players in the squad. Dewey Lake made a big difference, particularly in that Scotland game in the Six Nations when he came on. It wouldn't surprise me if he's one of the 3. I think the other point here is that we don't really know what size of squad they're going to take. Previous squads have been sort of 3 for each front row position, but if you take another one, then there's options there. But yeah, so I've gone Sheehan, Kelleher, and Luke Cowan-Dickie.
I think the numbers are interesting, and it's definitely not for us because we're never going to know. But when you think whoever sits on the bench is likely going to have to play a part 2 games on the bounce, and it'll come down to minutes rather than games and all that kind of sports science that goes into it. I think they'll take 4 hookers personally, and I think Jamie George will go because of the experience he takes. I think it might be Kelleher that misses out.
It wouldn't surprise me if that is the case. I think you might be right about taking 4 because of the rules about front row players. If you take 3, they all have to then go and do the warm up and all sorts for every game. Because if somebody drops out last minute, they need to be ready. So I think you might be right, but I think it's from a Scottish point of view, it's the one position that I was miles off putting a Scottish name down, which is probably slightly disappointing. But I think George Turner probably would have been the one had he not gone to Japan.
Johnny Matthews should be there. We all know that. Tight head. So at the moment, this is getting scarily like an all-Ireland front row. So let's hear it. Gav, tight head?
Yeah. So I debated long about this because I didn't think this was as easy as it maybe seems because of injuries. But in the end, I've gone Tadhg Furlong, Xander Fagerson and Will Stewart with backups of, Finlay Bealham, providing that one of Fagerson or Furlong don't make it. Xander obviously is a worry at the minute. But yeah, that was basically an Irish starting front row for me.
To be honest, I don't think that's a bad thing, Gav or Bruce. They're all together, they know each other very well. I mean, my gut says that Xander's going to be okay, but it's all sort of smokes and mirrors just now. With saying will they play, will they not play? So with that in mind as well, I'm going to go with Furlong, Fagerson, and again, this is everybody's talking up Will Stewart down south, so I'm going to go Finlay Bealham at badness for the 3 of them. So that's the way I would go.
I think back to the playing time. I think I reckon they're taking 12. I reckon they're taking 4 1s, 4 2s, 4 3s.
The thing is, though, Bruce, and I know this sounds ridiculous, and I wrote in my column this week how they were charging £60 for people to hear them read a squad announcement.
It's the most read column there's been for months. It's the most Scottish column you could possibly read.
Good, but. Every player costs money. I know what you're saying. In a perfect world, they take 50, but they all cost money as well. They all get, I don't know how much they get, but they get a fair whack each. So I think that has to come into considerations as well. And I know what you're saying, Bruce, but I don't think it'll be as many as that. I'm not quite sure how many it'll be, but the money men will be saying, no, you can't take 4 in that position.
So I think
there's no doubt they're being flown over though, because there's no way 3 are surviving the tour in all those positions.
Yeah, I think that's probably that. I mean, that is probably fair. You look at the last 2 tours, maybe not in 21, but they definitely have added people into the squad at some point. I think just on that, I wonder if the way round taking 4 tight heads and 4 loose heads is to take a guy who can play both, which is a kind of rarity now.
Yeah, it's a rarity now. Who you think? I can't think.
So my sort of wild card bolter, if you like, was Asher Apoko Forjur from Sale, who I think.
Say that again, Gav.
Yeah, Asher Apoko Forjur.
Oh, that's what he said. Yeah.
He plays tight head for Sale, but England see him as a loose head, and I think, well, if they're in a situation where they need cover, and it would be just as cover. I can see a situation where somebody like that ends up in the squad.
Where are England touring this year? Are they in Argentina?
Yes, I think that's right.
Clive Woodward took everybody apart from me, I think. Whereas 97 Lions boys they also didn't carry the full front row, so you needed a Jason Leonard that could play on either side and all. Like the days have changed. I get what you mean, Rob. Like the bean counters will be saying, do you really need to take all of them? And I do wonder that it's always a sad thing. I love that element of touring that you sit on the bench on Tuesday because you're playing on Saturday and, dry your eyes and get on with it. But I'm not convinced many sports scientists will agree with my technical term there of dry your eyes and get on with it. So I think we're probably set on one of our second rows because you've named him as captain. So it looks like Maro gets to go. Well, you haven't. You're just being awkward. So second rows, I think I know two names guaranteed. When I was reading up on various different people talking about selections here, there was a few names that got chucked around. So Gav, how many locks are you going for? 5, I think. Is that right? Between the two?
I've picked 5. But the sort of caveat is a couple of them could play in the second row. So, yeah, I've obviously picked Maro as captain. So I've got Maro, Tadhg, they would be my starters, I think, as it stands. Then Joe McCarthy, just for a bit of bulk. Ollie Chesham, because again, the most like Tadhg, I think, possibly. And then the others, Daffyd Jenkins, George Martin, I kind of ummed and awed about. George Martin, I think, would be in the squad if he was fit, because he had a tight headlock who gives you plenty of power.
It's a massive human.
Huge
human.
But he's out. Like he's not going to play again this season. Didn't really play in the Six Nations. So my 5th second row is Scott Cummings, which might be a bit of a gamble because he's just back. But then I think what he's done kind of leading into the Six Nations was probably enough. And again, I think he's got ground to make up on the other. Certainly, it tells you McCarthy and Tadhg to get in the sort of test squad.
Rob, I'm sensing you're going to throw somebody else in here.
No, I'm not actually. I was going to say I don't see Scott Cummings as a worry. It's folk like Sione that's a worry for me, who hasn't played. I think Scott Cummings would be great to go. And I like units. We've got an Irish front row, I think we've picked, or I've picked. I'd go with an English second row. I'd go Chesham or Todje. They know each other for the same reason. I'd put them both in. But I would go Tadhg. Is he as good as he was last year? I don't think he is. I think he's still a great player, but I don't think he's, right. And who else? Scott Cummings and McCarthy. I'd definitely go McCarthy as well for a beast. But I would go the 2 Englishmen.
No beard.
Say again?
No beard.
No, I'm happy with that. I'm happy with my two Englishmen.
Yeah, I don't think there's too many. I actually saw quite a lot of people picked Cummings. Quite a lot of experts were talking about Cummings. But that's a pretty sizable front 5. Yeah. So first phase goes well.
I think it's got a bit of rugby about it, though. You look at all of them. Genge is good in the loose. Furlong's good in the loose. Dan Sheehan could probably play in the back row. If you pick the 2 English, Chesham could play at 6. My second row, Tadhg could play at 6. So I think there's enough about it that it probably is good enough to beat Australia.
Yeah,
through Route 1, but it can also go and play rugby and beat them, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. Right, let's jump to the back row because this is going to be an absolute shambles, I'm guessing. Doris, let's just discount Doris. Let's just say he's injured and we'll not even take him into account. Gav, let's go with you first. So I'm reckoning between those 3 positions, we're probably looking at 6 or 7 players.
Yeah, so I think I've got 7, but an 8th name who is, anyway. So I've gone Tom Curry, Ben Earl, Josh van der Fleer, Jack Willis, Tom Willis in place of Doris, Henry Henry Pollock and Jamie Ritchie. And I think if there's one to miss out there, unfortunately, it's Jamie. And I think it will be in favour of a kind of out-and-out number 8. And the two I've got are Jack Conan and Taulupe Faletau.
I have to admit, right, a lot of people have said Faletau, and I wouldn't have had him in the squad. I was really surprised at that. And you've completely blanked Morgan.
I really like I do like Jack Morgan. I just think, like, can you get him in there ahead of Willis? Like, Willis is a standout player for Toulouse almost every week. You know,
Pollock, Toulouse still playing rugby though.
That
French season lasting a bit longer.
That becomes a concern. So I was going to talk about this later when we talk about other positions. But yeah, so they would, if Toulouse reached the top 14 final, they would miss the first 3 games of the tour, which becomes a concern. That might be where you say, actually, okay, we've got enough back row, we'll discount Jack Willis and we get Jack Morgan in. But if you were picking, like, with this sort of no strings, we're not getting carried away by French bureaucracy. Jack Willis is in my. If I could pick purely on rugby, Jack Willis is in my squad.
Okay.
Well, my back row, I'm terrified, Bruce, after you've thrown good old Faletau under a bus, saying he shouldn't even be there. I'm thinking either him or Jack Conan to start at 8. So you've got him not even in the squad, and I've got Faletau possibly starting at 8 or Jack Conan. Probably I'd go Jack Conan, I think. Open side, Van der Flier has to start for me. He has to start. And I've got Jack Morgan and one of the Curry brothers, probably Ben, in there as well. And yeah, I think that, will they take I'd love them to take Jamie Ritchie. And before Saturday, I would say, yeah, definitely. He's definitely in. Now I'm not so sure. Ben Earl and Tom Curry being my other 2 there as well. And good old Jack from France is another option. But what I find fascinating, guys, and
no Henry Pollock.
He played well for Northampton in a great win, and he scored a great try. That's lightning in a bottle. Is that enough to be called up to the Lions off the back of that? Just one game? I don't think it is.
I think he's been good for a sustained sort of period now where you could make a case for a la Will Greenwood sort of 97.
Yeah. I think in hindsight, he probably will go, but I wouldn't take him.
Yeah.
For that reason. Can I just say one thing, though, and what I find really sad, and not a single one of us has mentioned him. Somebody a year ago who I thought was a stick-on for the Lions, Rory Darge.
I spoke to Gav this afternoon. I spoke to Gav this afternoon, and I said, unfortunately, I said to Gav this afternoon, I think, unfortunately, Darge is not being mentioned.
No, not, but anywhere, not just with us, but anybody.
Yeah.
This time last year, I really thought he was a stick-on. But the fact we've mentioned him, nobody has.
I think one of the things that counts against him, Rob, is that in a squad that's relatively small for the number of games they plays, he only plays 7. If you look at,
that's true.
When I was doing this, I kind of wrote down, right, okay, well, who are the players and what positions do they give you covering? Curry could play 6, 7, and 8. Errol plays 7 and 8. Van der Flier, fair enough, is just a 7, but like former World Player of the Year. Pollock could play on the flank or at 8. I think that lack of, and that's my worry about Jamie Ritchie, is that
he's a 7.
He's sort of he's a 6 or a 7.
Sorry, I'm talking about Darge there. Sorry,
but and Darge as well. I think the one for me is Jack Dempsey.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, of course, Jack Dempsey.
And
Jack Dempsey.
So I talk to you about this all the time, Gav, about local bias. What does Dempsey give you that the other number 8s from the other countries don't?
I'll answer that. Grit, determination, Australian knowledge.
Are you telling me those number 8s from those other nations don't give you grit and determination?
No, I'm not. But he's got the attitude. He's right. And again, I mean, Matt Ferguson sort of can play a lot in the bat, but never even came into my consideration. Maybe he should have. Maybe I should have brought him in. But Dempsey, sorry, is somebody I should maybe have considered. I'm not saying I put him in, Bruce, but he is somebody I think who's there or thereabouts. And the fact he's Australian, I think that makes a difference. And I think he'd be a great asset if he went there. And also,
that statement absolutely kills me. That absolutely kills me. But that's for another day. That's Bruce's Rugby 101. Do you know one of the other things that I think to be considered, and I don't know if these things are considered anymore, but you look at somebody like Pierre Schoeman, if it came down to him or Nicky Smith, who would you want in your squad on tour for a long period of time? Now, I have no idea. I don't know Nicky Smith at all. Yeah. But Pierre Schoeman, I'm guessing, is a pretty decent tourist and the kind of guy you'd want to have around in a squad. And that's one of those things that I'm glad DL is there, because hopefully he's going to be able to say, actually, Jamie Ritchie would be magic in a squad environment. He's been Scotland captain. He's a leader at Edinburgh, although not a formal captain. He's a leadership. He's good at Rory Darge. You know, if it comes down to a conversation, you're hoping that those coaches are jumping up and down. Like Wigglesworth, some of these boys are actually his mates. Like, he's played with some of these boys. Yeah. So I don't know how objective he's able.
Yeah, I know.
But I would love, and I'm never getting this, I would love them to say, right, you're only getting 37 players. That's all you're getting. If somebody gets injured, you can replace them, fine, but you're only taking 37. So you do need what you were talking about, Gav, a bit of flexibility. But you need to build that team really quickly, and you need to have folk who are willing to play 20 minutes on Tuesday and 65 on Saturday, and they're just going to get on with it because they're getting to be a British Lion. They're not professional rugby players, they're British Lions. I'll get off my soapbox now. But when you look at how physical and brutal these games are going to be, especially up front, that's why I think they probably take 12 front row, which breaks my heart a little bit, because a lot of them are going to be carrying water and watching for the stands and doing hospitality, but that's maybe the gig now. So, anyway, into scrum half. We all know who we're saying first. Rob, I'll let you go first.
Gibson Park by a mile. Alec Mitchell, maybe, of England, is his backup. And maybe probably Thomas Williams of Wales as well. I know that's probably what a lot of people have picked, but I can't really see past that. I know I should say Ben White, but I think he's maybe 4th or 5th in the list. And I don't know how many games he's starting. I know he's playing for too long, but how many games is he starting? I'm not entirely sure. Maybe not enough. So I'd certainly go with these three. And to be honest, I don't think the depth was terribly much there. So I'd go with these three, with Ben White maybe coming in if push comes to shove, if they get injured, before they leave, that is.
I don't think anybody's going to mention Van Portfleet, and neither am I really. But do you know who I think is class? And I got to watch him on Saturday, is Spencer at Bath.
Yeah.
I think he is a magnificent rugby player. And his box kicks are absolutely otherworldly. They're in the air for such... I genuinely don't know, Rob, because this is one of those things, you know, there was guys who played for the Lions who didn't get to play for England, and I never really understood those things.
Yeah.
You know, John Bentley was a Lions superstar, but got 4 or 5 caps for England. And I don't know how these things work, and neither I should, but I think Spencer is class. And you were talking about playing as a front row. If Finn Russell is going to be your starting 10, you're obviously going to play Gibson Park. But I think Spencer, and he's a captain of what appears to be one of the best teams in Europe at the moment. Talking about a tour squad.
Bruce, it's a good point you make, because if this was football and you had a team that was top of the English Premiership, Liverpool, and that was also going for a European trophy like Bath are doing, you would consider lots of their players at this stage. So that might be a good shout, Bruce. You never know.
I mean, I don't know. Gibson Park's a stick on. Like he's
I forget that.
He's your test 9. I do wonder if it's going to be a bit of an older tour in that we know Gibson Park's going to start a test. So in the games before the test, right, Mitchell, Williams, whoever we take, you're actually playing to be a test replacement. Mm-hmm. Gav, you got anybody else in there?
Nah. Let's move on. I think that's that. I mean, yeah, you've covered it perfectly. Gibson Park, Mitchell, Thomas Williams, and if you need a total wild card option, why don't they just take George Horne?
Yes. Now, see, I've finally worn you down. I got Johnny Matthews in, and you've got George Horne in, and we're going to get to Darcy Graham. So that's my three-man crush, all sorted, all dealt with. If I was Andy Farrell, they would be the first names on my tour list. Right, let's get to the one that's maybe going to cause some debate, and this local bias is going to kick in. Who's your starting test 10, Gavin?
It has to be Finn with 2 ends.
Finn with 2 ends.
So I've got my 3 10s are Finn Russell, Finn Smith, and then George Ford is my third.
Yeah, now I find that one funny because I've read so many, and a lot of people had Marcus Smith before the Six Nations, and they're now talking about Ford being the third choice 10. And obviously, Prendergast played 2 games and everybody went, oh, he's a lion now. And then he played another 2 games and all of a sudden he's not even considered. It's that fickle. I'm not sure he's a lion anyway, because it seemed like he was in an armchair for a lot of these Leinster and Ireland games. But are we being biased by picking Finn Russell, Rob?
No, I think he's miles away. Miles ahead, rather, of anybody else, and they should resist any attempt to get anybody else apart from Finn Russell to start at 10, because it would be ridiculous. Like Gav, I'd go Finn Smith. You made a convincing argument there against Prendergast, but I just think with Johnny Sexton there, and he's Johnny Sexton's boy, I think he'll go whether I think he should or not. So I'd go with Prendergast. I wouldn't take Owen Farrell. These are the 3 I would take: Russell, Smith, and Prendergast through default, because he's Sexton's boy, although you made a good counterpoint for not taking him.
There's a few points to this. The Farrell one, I would take Owen Farrell. But where I don't know if I would take Owen Farrell is because he wouldn't be my starter. So I don't know what he would be like in a squad as a backup, as not the starter. But if I was Andy Farrell, and because I would want my Lions to play with Finn, I would be telling Finn Russell on Thursday, Finn, you're my test 10. And I would tell him it now so that he was ready to go.
Yeah, but the same token, though, as Gav was saying, and you were saying as well, and I'm not advocating, I wouldn't take Farrell, but he can play in the centre as well. So when it comes to versatility, he could do that.
But as he's been and seen and done it. You hear folk talking about him. He's the consummate professional. He's a team man. He's a leader. He drives standards. I would, if it was me, I don't think he'll go. I think Russell and Smith will go. I'm really intrigued as to who the third one is. And back to that point of picking a squad, I'm picking Tom Jordan in my squad.
As a 10?
Yeah.
No, but as somebody who can play 10 on a Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, I've got Tom Jordan's in my squad as well, because he gives you that. So I looked at this as like, we need to take one utility back almost, somebody that could play anywhere. And Marcus Smith I thought about, and he kind of does 10 and 15, but actually the options at 15 aren't earth-shatteringly great. So we'll maybe get to that. But yeah,
let's get to that, yeah.
I think Tom, the other thing I think is interesting about the 9s and the 10s, Rob, you said earlier about the front row being like a unit, a combination.
Yeah.
And if you look at Prendergast, the only one of the 9s that we've picked that he'll have ever encountered before is Gibson Park. And if one's first choice and one's not, they're probably not going to have played together that much.
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of went for George Ford because I thought, well, he's got that wee bit more experience. He'll be used to.
I do think you're right, Gav. I think you could be right. It could be George Ford, but I just think, regardless, with Sexton there, they'll take Prendergast whether we like it or not. But
I would love to know if Andy Farrell has had a chat to Jameson Gibson Park and said, "Would you fancy playing with Finn Russell?" And I reckon Jameson Gibson Park is saying, "I would bite your hand off to play with Finn Russell." Those are like, you don't know, and you watch videos of players finding out at the same time as we do when it's announced on Sky and all that kind of thing. But there must be a heap of players that know fine well. You're not telling me that he's not having conversations with players. And I would be chatting to Gibson Park and Finn Russell and saying, right, lads, we're planning now. The intention is the two of you are going to start the first test together.
And I mean, you talked about Prendergast looking like he's been in an armchair. The pack that we've picked is pretty handy. If they get front football and give Gibson Park and Finn Russell and the centres that we're about to pick some, decent ball, like the Lions. And I know, like, to Rob's point on the piece with Jim Telfer, I think he's right that, like, the Wallabies have got better. They're a Joe Schmidt team. They can't be as bad as they were at the World Cup. But I still think, like, I find it hard not to see the Lions winning 3-0.
Yeah.
The only 10 in that group that's been mentioned that could come close to Finn Russell's current kicking ability is Ford. But what Ford doesn't give you is all the other stuff Finn gives you. And I think Finn Russell, the way he is collecting 50-22s for fun, and the variety he has around his kicking, and what's his face, Borthwick, the team that kicks the furthest wins. Now, I don't think the Lions are necessarily going to have to kick the furthest, but they're going to have to kick well. And I think Finn Russell and Jameson Gibson Park are absolutely the two to conduct the orchestra. And like you say, Gav, that front eight should give them the authority and capability of going and having a whole heap of fun. Right, let's get to centre, because this one, I joked with you a couple of weeks ago, Gav, about what my centre partnership would be, and I actually saw, I can't remember who it was, I read this afternoon, who actually picked that centre partnership, and I had a chuckle to myself. So, Gav, we'll go to you first. Who's your centres?
So I found this pretty easy. So with the caveat that Tom Jordan would be the sort of the fifth, the extra, if you like, I've gone Sione Tuipulotu, Hugh Jones, Robbie Henshaw, Gary Ringrose.
Tuipulotu, Henshaw, Shuggy, Ringrose, and Jordan.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced Farrell's taking them. Go for it, Rob.
Well, to be honest, I'm not far off that. I've got Ringrose and Tuipulotu starting, but I've also got Hugh Jones and Henshaw. And I've got Bundyaki in there as well. Some people are saying he's past his best, he shouldn't go, but he's an absolute beast. So I would certainly take him as well. And either Ben Thomas of Wales or Tom Jordan. I'm no shoot. Is Jordan done enough, do you think?
I think probably not in one position. And I think that's why, like, I keep making this point that he would be like a utility player, because I think his number one attribute is his versatility in this squad. Yeah. I think I can see it being Aki, Henshaw, Ringrose, Jones, maybe. I think Sione might have some more work to do than people in these parts.
I think you're right. Yeah.
I think Ollie Lawrence would have got in before he got injured. Mm-hmm. And I think, to your point, Bruce, I think he possibly could have been a test contender, because he's got that relationship with Finn. And it's a shame he's injured, but there's none of the, like, I thought about Henry Slade. Is he not really Max Llewellyn? Nah. they're all kind of a level below the 4 I've picked. So yeah, I found it hard to kind of deviate, but I get your point, Bruce, that they don't feel like Andy Farrell selections, but I suppose who does?
I wouldn't be sad, and I said this to you a couple of weeks ago. Aki at 12 and Tuipulotu at 13. Go and have some fun, boys.
I think that'd be too one-dimensional, shall we say?
I think Sione's got more, but I think we're going to see. I would love it to be Sione and Shuggy, but I'm not convinced we're going to get 10, 12, 13, 15, 14, 11, all Scottish.
No. Gav, just on that, I mean, I'm getting a bit bored with people are saying Sione's nearly there, he's nearly there. I mean, what does your gut say?
My gut says he'll play this weekend.
All right, fair enough then, that's fine. So he'll have plenty of time to get back into it then. That's fine.
So, I mean, that should be... Well, it would be 5 games if Glasgow get to the URC final, which I think is more than enough.
It's such a funny one, though, because we're trying to guess Andy Farrell, but we're picking who we want. But some of the things that we're throwing in here, players who are going to be injured at the time of announcement, players who are still going to be playing potentially another 8 games in France, or 6 games, or whatever it is in France, and games that have already started when the tour's kicked off. Like you didn't want to be last into the party. Like that's not the good way to be. Like you want to be there from the start. So there's a whole load of things thrown into this selection, and Sione, I think, has enough in the tank that he can, be selected on what he's done, and with the confidence that in a professional environment he'll be up to speed and ready to go during those times that really matter during the tour. I think Tom Jordan is backed a little bit of local bias, but if you were looking for somebody to play at an international level at 10, 12, potentially 13 and 15, Tom Jordan maybe is your man.
Yeah, I think to your point about Sione, I think I get a feeling he's been ready for a while. Mm-hmm. So when we were in Dublin for that massacre, the 52-0 game, he was on the field and he was running about. So I think he's possibly been held back by Glasgow for these last sort of 2 games to give him a run at it. You could make the case 6 or 7 games might be too many. If he goes on tour, he probably wants to play 2 of the first 3. So I think there's loads of time for him.
Yeah.
I think they were also they had this week off, so there's no point in playing them to then have just use that, and when you come back, please come back flying, Sione. Okay, I think we're almost there. I'm quite surprised at this. Right, 11, 14, 15. Let's just group them together. Let's go start.
Let's do the fullbacks on their own. Go on.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we all know who that's going to be.
Well,
right, Rob. Who's your starting 15?
Oh, my 15. Oh, okay. Well, Blair Kinghorn if he's fit, but Hugo Keenan's no far off, and who else? Blair Murray, maybe from Wales. That might be a bit daft, but I just think the other 2 are so far ahead that the third guy, whoever that is, and it could be what we were talking about earlier, that maybe a guy who can play somewhere else can also play as fullback as a backup, because these 2 guys are miles ahead. I know what you're saying, who you think it is, but I'm hoping he's fit. I'm hoping he comes back sooner rather than later, Blair Kinghorn, but I still think Hugo Keenan is a class act as well. So these 2, definitely. The third one, I'm not that bothered. If these guys stay fit and they're there, they could play the whole tour and they'd be brilliant.
I think whichever one doesn't start probably sits on the bench because they're able to, Blair could play on the wing. No, Gav's giving me that face that he's ready for his tea. Come on then, who's your 15?
I'm not convinced that the other one does sit on the bench. I would go the other way around. So I would go Hugo Keenan to start. And then I think you could make a case for Blair being on the bench because he can play on the wing. I think this probably loops into the conversation about the wingers. But again, if Blair's impinged by this not being able to play the first 3 games, that's where somebody like a Tom Jordan becomes really useful, because you know, if Hugo Keenan is possibly the starter in the test matches, you don't want him playing then the first 3 games of the tour. And I feel like if you take a Marcus Smith, who gives you a bit of cover at 10, you've then essentially got a 4th 10 twiddling his thumbs, asked to do a bit of fullback, sort of against, you know, the combined country or whoever it might be, you know, Waratahs midweek. So I just think Blair Murray was on my list. Freddie Stewart made my sort of list as well, but I'd be more inclined, if this was South Africa or maybe even New Zealand, I would say Freddie Stewart, get him in because they'll kick the leather off it. I just don't see that being the way the Wallabies play and not suiting his strengths. I think also he's fallen away with England. So, yeah, I've gone Kinghorn, Keenan, Kinghorn, and then, as I say, Tom Jordan as a sort of all-round.
I could live with that as well, if it came to it.
Blair unfortunately becomes quite attractive as a replacement with a 6-2 bench, fullback, winger, standoff. You know, your other one's going to be a scrum half, which is probably where they should take George Horn, because then he covers more than just scrum half. But Blair covers at least 3 positions.
Have you just made a case for Jamie Dobie being on the Lions tour?
Jamie Dobie. I would take Dobie and George Horn. And Johnny Matthews and Darcy Graham. Right, let's get to it, because I'm sick of waiting for this. I stupidly said let's start up front, and I just want to get to this bit. So who's our wingers? Who's going on the ding-a-ling?
Will I go first, Gav?
When you go, Rob.
Tommy Freeman for me, and I've also got, who else have I got? James Lowe, Duhan. Somebody's missing. I can't think. Some Scottish guy, some wee guy for the Borders. Bruce, could you help me? Oh, Darcy Graham as well. And here's one for you. And you're talking about people who can play in different positions. He's versatile. He's Scottish. He's Kyle Steyn. Captain Scotland. He's captain Glasgow. He can play in the centre. He can play on the wing. Kyle Steyn. And that'll do me, I think. Also, just before going.
That's some brutal local bias.
Just one other thing as well, which is concerning me. I read the Times today, and Sam Warburton has his team in the Times today, and he said he thinks that the Lions should take a chance on Emmanuel Waboso.
A few people are talking him up.
If Sam Warburton wasn't Welsh, I'd think, Sam, give me a break. But maybe Sam Warburton, being Welsh, knows something about this that we don't, and this guy's maybe got a chance. So, basically, bearing that in mind, he might be in the mix. But Kyle Steyn, he's my wild card.
Wow, that is wild. Go for it, Gav.
Right, there's no huge surprises here. I've got James Lowe, Duhan, Darcy Graham, and Tommy Freeman. And then the ones I sort of ummed and awed about, Mac Hansen, I think because of that Irish connection, through no sort of inside knowledge of the situation, I've got Faye Waboso on my sort of long list. I think had he been fit the whole season, he might have been the Lewis Rees Zammit of this tour. I just think, if you look at the competition, unless Duhan is a lot further away with his injury than we think, I think he's done enough to go.
Yeah, definitely.
The other one, I had Kyle Steyn on the sort of longer list as well, and maybe just outside. But the other one that has been talked about by sort of pundits, journalists south of the border is Elliot Daly. And again, through no sort of real form, but again, a guy who can play 13, did play 13 in the last Lions series, could play on the wing, and gives you cover at fullback, and has got a ridiculous left boot and kicks goals from inside his own half. He's not in my squad, but it wouldn't surprise me to see his name flash up on the screen on Thursday.
Yeah, interesting. And you've also, talking about flexibility, it's been a while, but Shuggy can play 15. you know, and has bounced around a bit. There is a bit of flexibility there. Who's your starting wingers? Lowe and Freeman for both of you?
No, Lowe and Duhan is these the right wings? Let me check what I've got. I'd put Freeman and Duhan.
Wow.
Oh, interesting. So I would definitely get James Lowe in somewhere, and then it's tough because Freeman isn't good. I probably am going Lowe and Freeman. With the two, currently the two Scottish guys are playing in the midweeks. But you know, as we've seen many times before, that can all. There's plenty of rugby, I suppose, to play on the tour before the test matches, so it could all change.
Gavin, Big Bruce is not going to speak to us. We've not picked Darcy to start.
Listen, Farrell's not picking up. Farrell's not picking him in the test team. I'll be absolute. And Darcy, if Darcy is a Lions tourist, he could pop his clogs in November, the happiest man ever to have walked there. It's going to make the absolute world to him. And everybody that knows him, you know, you both know that. Everybody that knows him wants it to happen. Now, I know that's probably the case for a lot of other people, but for Darcy Graham, it would be the absolute world. And I'm not sure in 4 years' time, Darcy Graham will be in the conversation.
No, you're right. I think
and that's, I don't know how that comes across, but I feel like this is Darcy's shot to be a British Lion, because in 4 years' time, I'm not sure that chance will still be there. The game will be different. Scotland will be different. Wingers will be different. Who knows how his body is going to have held up? But, you know, he takes a pounding as it is. I hope he gets to the end of the season on fire. I hope Edinburgh can get him the ball. I hope he can make a bit of a statement. And that's, I would take so much out of just Darcy being named. He's the name I'm listening for on Thursday. He's the one name I'm listening for. Yes, the others.
You love him.
But knowing where he's come from and what he's done and being the size he is, and Hoyk Rugby is going through what it's going through, to have another Lion to add to that list. And he is the most... he's electric. He gets everybody excited. Amazing to see him. And there's a big bit of me wants to see Blair as a British Lion, to see what he can do in that company, in that situation. Because when he went to Toulouse, we all went, wow, look at what he's capable of. Imagine that in amongst, you know, we're back three, Freeman and Lowe, with Henshaw and Sione in front of him, with Finn and Gibson, you know. Amazing, absolutely amazing opportunity for these boys. But I can't get inside Andy Farrell's head at all. I've got no clue what's coming.
Incredible that Blair Kinghorn could be selected this week for the British Lions, and it still wouldn't be the best backline he gets a chance to play in.
That's a belter. That is an absolute belter. He'd be like, oh no, I'm just playing with Gibson Park. Oh,
exactly, I know.
I come in.
Incredible.
So our test team to take the pitch in the first test: Porter, Sheehan, Furlong are front row. Itoje and Byrne are second row.
Chesham for me, but yeah, keep going.
Okay. The back row, I'm a bit jumbled here with who we're going to start. So I think Van der Fleer gets the nod at 7.
Yep.
Yes. Tom Curry on blindside for me.
Tom, not Ben.
You've now got me double guessing myself. I'm sure it's Tom, is it not?
Gav?
One of the Curry brothers then.
Who's your 6, Gav?
I've got Tom Curry, Van der Fleer, and as it stands, number 8 could be the one position that is like could be anybody. Could be Ben Earl, could be Tom Willis, could be Jack Willis. He's played there for Toulouse. Could be Henry Pollock.
I'll go Conan. I would have gone Fatal.
Oh,
wow. I'm going Conan. I could have gone Falatau, but Bruce has unnerved me and by saying he shouldn't be in the squad. So I'll go Conan.
Okay,
and if he gets started at 8 in the first test, Bruce, You owe me a Mars bar.
I feel for Big Tobes because I'd love him to go. And, he's been an incredible player.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell how good he was for Wales in that last Six Nations because it was so difficult.
I thought he was good.
No, I know that, but it's so difficult. It's almost you're comparing apples and pears because he didn't have anything to play with. It breaks my heart, and I've lived through the time as you both have of there being hardly any Scots on tour. It doesn't get the folk that take pleasure out of Welsh rugby being on its backside make me a little bit sick. I hate that we've just had a conversation about a Lions squad and we've pretty much given Dewey Lake a tour, and after that Williams possibly at 9, Morgan maybe. We're talking 3 players and 2 of them with pretty sizable question marks over them.
Yeah,
to go on tour. That's heartbreaking because I know Scots rugby fans who didn't really support the Lions because they didn't have any Scots to support. And Wales, the history and tradition the Welsh have got, we wear red for crying out loud. To not have any Welsh is heartbreaking. Anyway, back off my soapbox. 9 Gibson.
Let me come back on that.
Go on in.
Don't show your heartbreak. They had no sympathy for us when Scotland had hardly any Lions under Gatland. So I've absolutely no sympathy for them. It's the way things go, Bruce. It's their turn to suffer. Let them suffer.
And my interjection here is back to the Faletau situation where, if you remember when the squad was picked 4 years ago, Gatland said it basically came down to Johnny Sexton's omission was to do with his durability. That's my big Faletau worry. He's always injured. And I just think in such a small squad, you fly a guy out for a couple of games. Now, he might last the whole tour playing in the midweeks, but if you need him to play 3 test matches, I'm not sure the last time Faletau played 80 minutes before probably the Six Nations. Yeah. And, that was my big sort of sticking point with him, as sort of classy as I think he's been over the years.
Yeah. I think all of that is fair. Right, 9, Gibson Park, stick on. 10 for all of us, Finn Russell. Starting 12.
Sione, if he's fit for me.
Yeah, like
Gav, you think? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sione 12, 13 ring rows for everyone.
Yeah, that's for me, yeah.
Hugh Jones for me.
Oh!
Okay, Shuggy. This is a Scottish backline for you, Gavlar. Who's our 15? Starting, I think you both said Keenan.
No, I didn't. I prefer Blair Kinghorn if he's fit.
And I'd pick Keenan.
And then on the Dingalings, I think, did we go, Rob, you went Van der Merwe and Freeman, is that right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And you went Lowe and Freeman, Gav?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
The wing, Bruce, along with Darcy?
I'd have Kinghorn at 15. I'd have Graham at 14. I'd have Ringrose at 13. Tuapolo at 12. I'd have Lowe at 11. Russell at 10. And Gibson Park at 9.
That's fair.
And Ireland, Scotland select.
Yes.
Yeah. And I wouldn't lose any sleep over that being the team.
Yeah.
And I'd carry Keenan, Spencer, and Jordan on the bench.
I really do hope. I think that we've picked terrific teams, absolutely terrific teams. But the downside is, I really want the first test to be close.
Yeah.
Terrible feeling that Lions are going to win 3 tests quite easily. I know what Telfer said, that Australia's maybe they're not as bad as people think they are. But you really want the first test to be close, or dare I say, even an Australian win, just to get the interest. You do not want a Lions win by 30 points or anything like that. You want to try and keep the interest going.
But I've bumped my gums about this for a while. Scotland's golden generation that don't have any gold. Yes, we are better than we've been, but so are other countries.
Yeah, they always get
The Australians are better than they were in the autumn test. There's no question they're better than they were. But this Lions team should be very, very good.
Yeah.
And it's going to be heavily Irish, as we know. there's going to be a few English in there with their real strengths at being big and strong and horrendous to play against up front. And then Scotland have got a purple patch of backs who, for Scotland, haven't really had a pack that has allowed them to perform. I'm not sure Farrell's going to give as many Scots a test game as we would like him to. But what an opportunity for that, the Scots that do get to play, to go, look at actually how good I can be.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about that is that, like Jim Telfer said this in the old Living with the Lions, that to be picked is the easy bit, but it's also the first bit. To get in the test team, you've got to be in this squad on Thursday. And if Darcy, who's, for all of us, apart from you, well, for Rob and I, he's an outsider. For Finn Smith, he's an outsider. For us, if they're on the tour, they've got a shot, and there's loads of games. I know they're of different quality, but there's games to play. I was reading a tweet earlier that said, there's this combined sort of Anzac team.
So that, yeah, Fallad, whatever it's called, yeah.
And I saw the suggestion that Aaron Smith and Will Genia might be the two scrum halves. And thought, like, do you know what? If you're Gibson Park or like if you're Andy Farrell, you're saying, yes, please, because actually we need a proper game before the test series. But like that would be so good if there was a few, maybe 42-year-old man, Noni will get a game.
Maybe 45 Bruce Aitchison will get a game. Maybe Jack Dempsey will get a game.
Hey, listen, don't knock Jack Dempsey.
Maybe he could play a half for the Lions and a half for the home team.
That's
Who is it played against? Was it Ricky Flutie? Who was it played against the Lions and then played for them?
Yeah, I think it would have been Ricky Flutie in 05.
All right.
And then 09.
Yeah, Ricky Flutie punched one of my pals in a bar in New Zealand. That's another story. We'll save that for his autobiography. Yes. Gents, I've enjoyed that. It was less contentious than I thought it was going to be, I have to admit, and maybe it's made easier when you pretty much remove a quarter of the names that could go in. You're a hard man, Rob. Jeez, you are a hard man. That's going to come back to bite you in the ass at some point. I've got no question. Gentlemen, an absolute pleasure. Rob, I should have brought my book through. My arms are about 6 inches longer, carrying it around the outlet village at Livingston on Sunday.
People didn't see what Bruce put, but Bruce had a picture of himself with the Scotland book with an angel background. A less angelic human being you will never meet.
Hey.
Where you got that?
Harsh. Luckily, it's got lots of nice pictures in it.
It has. Yeah. That's exactly it.
You've also called it the Scotland book there, Rob, which I feel like somewhat underplays your role in co-authoring the book.
Yeah, I know. I did kind of underplay that. I know. But
where can Rob? You've plugged it everywhere else, including at press conferences with Razzie Erasmus. So you might as well give it one final bash here.
100 years at Murrayfield in 100 games, nearly sold out. Only 450 left. Out of a very many thousand print run, so it's done really, really well. So, and even Bruce Aitchison bought one. That's on our cover now, and he's given it 5 stars. So, what more could you ask?
Aye, I'm the only person in Scottish media rugby that's not got his name on the back of it with a quote or forward.
Ouch!
And I've been fishing for months to get a free copy, and I had to go and buy one. So.
That will have stung you as well.
Oh, tell you, hey.
That's why I'm a hard man. That's what he's talking to me about that. Yes. We'll give him a free one. That's exactly what it is.
It's brilliant. And I don't know how you chose the games, and that's for another day, but my very first Scotland game in 1989 is in it.
Oh, is
and
it?
then there's Scotland against Ireland, Six Nations. 1989 was my first game on what were the schoolboy benches. Obviously, you can't call them anymore, but it was. There's a lot of games in there that I was at, and it's been nice looking at pictures and reading about it, because although I was there, there's huge gaps in what I remember. Although I am slightly disappointed that the Boroughmuir against Hawick BT final isn't in there. Darcy Graham's first game of senior rugby, Magnus Bradbury scoring try. Maybe that's for the 150 year book.
Exactly. What was your first game, Gav? Is that in the book? Your first game?
I'm not sure it is. I think my first game was France 90. Oh no, it would have been Australia 97. Being from Haddington and involved with Haddington Rugby Club, I think we got tickets through the club to see Grant McKelvey play for Scotland. His one and only cap, which didn't end that well. They got well beat by Australia, so I don't think that's made the cut in the book.
No, I don't think so. It's probably not even made the cut in Grant McKelvey's house. That game is kept out below the radar.
Yeah, probably. But there are loads of books that are loads of games that I was at that are in the book, and as Bruce says, it's a great sort of trip down memory lane of all the great games. So that's great.
Somebody said it's worth buying a coffee table for just so you can put it on it.
Well, it's fixed the shugly leg on my coffee table. Magic just fits right underneath it. Do you know? But in all seriousness, the beauty of it is you can just you can open it and just read the game.
Yes,
read that game. It's a cool thing. So, well, congratulations, Rob. It's a really cracking thing, and I'm enjoying my copy of it. Gentlemen, an absolute pleasure. Let's see what comes on Thursday, this Lions squad, and hopefully we're going to be smiling about a few of our Scottish pals getting to go and wear red in the summer. Hopefully I'll see you soon, if not at the Ulster game, but maybe before. Last word from our sponsor. Scotland Rugby News was brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request and head over to S1 Jobs and upload your CV, you can go and do that now, because we're finished. With thousands of jobs across Scotland, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs. So start your search today. In the meantime, look after yourselves, and we'll see you all next week to talk about who got in.